The day has finally come. We are going to install the front locker on my TJ. Now I have a Spartan locker. So to start out, jack up your Jeep, put the axle on jack stands, take the tires off, and we're going to get the axles out. You get the axles out just by removing these 3 bolts. That is a 12.13. Once you remove those 3 bolts, the entire hub assembly and axle should slide out. These are not C-clip axles, so they should just slide out pretty easily. Guys, here's where my experience may be quite a bit different than yours. These are fairly new unit bearings and axles that I just put in less than a year ago. I didn't have a lot of corrosion. I live in a fairly rust-free climate, so these came out pretty easily, and this is going to come out really easily as well. If you live in a less forgiving environment, then you may have to do a little bit of heat right here, hit that with some hammers, try not to damage the unit bearing to get this to break loose, because it can be a kind of a beast. I'm just going to pull this out. It doesn't have to come all the way out. Once you see it kind of tilt down like that, that means it's past that inner seal. 17 minutes in, I've had the tires off, the brakes off, and the axles pulled out. Now I'm gonna go find me a catch for the diff fluid and take those diff bolts out and break that cover loose. So guys, the one thing that'll slow you down quicker than anything is pure stupidity. So I had my bucket under there that caught my gear oil, and yeah, it was a bucket, it wasn't an oil catch. I realized all the other videos were right, and I really needed to get this tie rod out of the way, so I disconnected the tie rod, and as soon as it dropped, it crushed the bucket. I mean, crushed it. And so half of the most disgusting fluid known to man that was in my Dana 30 poured out onto the driveway. Anyway, it's time to take these off. So you're going to start here. All the other videos say the exact same thing. You're going to take the bearing caps out, which are these. Make sure you maintain which side is which and which orientation is which means they have to go to the same side and they have to go up and down in the same way you took them off. All right guys, again, I'm going to make sure that this cap stays on this side and the orientation is correct. Once I get to this point, I should be able to pry it out. It'll probably be pretty snug. These bearing caps will probably come out and fall on the ground. Make sure you pick those up. They should also stay on the same side. There it is. Oh, I didn't lose the bearing caps. So I'm going to go ahead and take the bearing caps off before I do lose them. And again, I'm going to put them over here on the side. And now you have your differential out. Take it to the workbench so we can work on it a little bit further. Isn't it so cute? It's such a cute little guy. So guys, quick update, 42 minutes in, and here's where we're at. The next thing we're going to do is remove, well, we're going to check our bearings, make sure they're good. But we will remove this ring gear. Once we remove the ring gear, we'll remove this cross pin. It has a roll pin that holds it in that you can access from this hole right here. You just bash it out. So let's do all that. The thing I'll do, it's not necessarily necessary, is I'll mark this ring gear and the carrier so that the same holes line up in the same places. This one's already kind of pre-marked. It's got this emblem right here, and this emblem is on the same lug as the roll pin. So I'm just going to line that up when I put this back on, make sure this lines up just to the left of the roll pin. Get all these off. I just need a mallet, tap on that. Hopefully it comes off. Sometimes they can be stubborn depending on where you're from. Use a rubber mallet, don't use a hammer. You don't want to chip or damage this. You get this tiny little Dana 30 ring gear off there. You can move on to getting the cross pin out so you can remove all the spider gears. So this cross pin is put in not with a bolt like a 8.8 or some of the bigger axles. It's put in with this roll pin. And you can access the back side of this roll pin through this little hole, as I said earlier. What I found was you can either use a punch or get the exact size screw. I just happen to have a machine screw here that you can put down there and tap with a hammer, and you can see I've already started pulling that roll pin out. Once that roll pin comes out, the kit does come with a new roll pin. Don't have to worry about reusing that because it comes with a new cross pin and roll pin. Let me go ahead and get that out, and then we'll remove the spider gears. Once the roll pin is out, you just slide this out. Tap this out. Then you can just rotate these and take these out. All gears will have thrust washers on the back. Make sure those come out with them. The larger gears will have a shim on the back. Make sure that shim comes out with it. You can see it moving right there. The Spartan lockers, the shims and the thrust washers are not reused. On the Aussie lockers from other brands, you may have to reuse the shims. So make sure you don't lose them. I'm going to keep them anyway because I'm going to keep them just in case I ever run into an issue where the locker breaks and I need to reinstall the spider gears. I have an open carrier. I'm just going to go ahead and dry everything up and clean everything up for install. First thing we want to do is put these pins and the springs in. I kind of like the way this locker does the pins and springs. It actually houses the springs within the pins. I don't know if that's stronger or weaker, if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but for setup it definitely works. I want to make sure that these spacers are placed in here per the instructions, which I'll need to go look first at the instructions. And place the pins and the springs before we do that. And the way these works is the spring goes in the pin, and you can see the pin has this little channel around it. That's for the setup dowel that goes in there and holds that spring down. Each one of these cam gears actually has a little hole where you can preset that down in there. So I'm going to put that down there. I'm going to press it down tight, and I'm going to put my dowel in. And now that spring is captured in there. And I'll use the dowel to release it once I put everything in the carrier. Different than the other lockers similar to this because you have to actually put the pieces in and then wedge the springs in there. Again, I don't know if this is better or worse, but it's definitely easier. Once you get all the dowels in place, it'll look like that. Alright, for installing it into the carrier, go ahead and place the two side gears. Remember that placing the side gear closest to the pinion is easier. So when you put these spacers in here, the open end matches the gear teeth end. You get that in place, we're going to install this first. Oh, the hell do you do that? Alright, so getting that in there is a chore, but it will go. Mate those gears up. So it's got these flat sides for a reason. Once everything's in place, I'm going to line these teeth up, make sure they're lined up. Line up my cross pin hole, make sure it's lined up, best it can be. And then I will start pulling these dowels out. Without pulling the whole gear out. Once you do that, you'll see there's a gap here. There is a measurement on this gap. It's a 0.145 or a 0.170, somewhere between there. I've got to get my feeler gauges out. A lot of the people I've seen don't measure this gap on these Spartan lockers because there's really no adjustment. As long as there's nothing binding, there's no way for that to get out of adjustment because there's no shims. But I'm still going to measure it just in case, just to make sure. I don't want to have to install and then reinstall. I don't know if you can catch it on the video, but I will notate it if you can. But I put one of those spacers in backwards even after telling y'all not to put them in backwards. The good news is that this center pin would not go in with that spacer backwards. So I didn't film me getting this back apart because I panicked a little bit. and really just forgot that I was filming. What you can do is you can use a thin screwdriver to press these pins down a little bit, get another one in, press them down, and then put the dowel back in, and it can all come back apart. Cross pin should slide in easily. That was my problem. It wasn't sliding in easily, so I knew there was an issue. Get the cross pin lined up. Of course, after you measure this gap, my gap is in spec. Push it down in there. Once you get the cross pin lined up and that hole lined up, dowel in. And you can just tap it through from this side. We'll reinstall the ring gear. All right, you want to get that roll pin just below flush, just like that. And now I'm ready to reinstall the ring gear. Guys, I will tighten these down in a crisscross pattern, and I will tighten them down to 55 foot-pound using my torque wrench. That's an 11/16. I will put just a small drop of Loctite on each one. Got them all torqued down to 55, and we'll go around one more time. Torque to 55. This thing's ready to go back in the Jeep. There we go. All right, remember the bearing caps have to go back to their original side. Once I get them in place, I'm going to take these back out, clean up the threads, put a dab of Loctite on them before I tighten them down. I need to look up the torque specs on these. Read says those are 60 pounds. All right, we're ready to put the cover back on, load it, put the axle shafts in. It should just slide in. The unit bearings back in, put the brake calipers back on, and then we should be ready to do a preset on this. I got to read. All right, so per instructions, it's time to see if I can get this thing to lock up. I got the transfer case in forward drive, so the drive line should be stationary. I'll wedge one tire, turn the other one, and see if it stops. And it stopped. And it stopped. Check the other one. Alright, I think that's the way it's supposed to work. It means we'll see. Things right.
Do you not know what you're doing?
Oh, I don't know what I'm doing. Oh my gosh. What can it be? So let me go get some fluid. We'll button up the front and we'll actually drive. See just how bad the clicking and popping and jerking is. Again, that was with it in forward drive. I think it'll be a lot better with it out of forward drive because I'll also need a new boot for this tie rod in, so I'll grab that while I'm out. All right, so everything's good. Diff fluid's in here. This thing's disgusting. Let's go see if we clickety-clack going down the street. You know, the first time you put things back together after having them apart is always nerve-wracking, no matter how many times you've done it. Okay. Now if I push in the clutch. Let's see. We'll turn. Nothing yet. I don't hear anything. I don't have any load on the wheels right now. I don't hear anything at all. Hopefully it locks up when it needs to.
So I didn't film much of that drive because it was uneventful. Nothing happened. There wasn't any clicking or popping. One time I went around the cul-de-sac and I turned real sharp and I could hear ratcheting. So I assume it's working. Put it in 4-wheel drive just around the yard. I didn't have anything to spin the tires with, but the steering felt a lot heavier, which I would think would be a symptom of it being locked up. The steering did feel heavier. It pulled in 4-wheel drive, so I'm confident that the 4-wheel drive works. The front wheels are engaging. I'll be taking this thing over to Choco Loco, I don't know, here in the next couple weeks, and we'll see if it actually works or not. Hopefully it doesn't break on me. Seemed like a pretty straightforward, easy install, guys. So I may have screwed something up, but I don't think I did. Hopefully this video helps you out. The Jeep is going to get some love soon. JK's going to get some love soon. I got some exhaust for it. I still have to fix the exhaust on the TJ, and I got parts in to start building this bumper. So, guys, thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and